I'm looking forward today to discussing with you the debunking of some buzzwords regarding visibility and omnichannel, and more specifically, bringing some realism to this discussion of supply chain technology. Can you first, my first question is pertaining to this topic is, what is the biggest barrier that to generating return on investment of a TMS?
Thanks, Dustin, for having me on this call. I think the first thing that most companies need to kind of clean up or look at is how they're coming up with the definition of the return on investment in the first place. So I see a lot of companies will put together these business cases with huge benefits and a huge return when really those are very aggressive types of numbers to hit, and they don't necessarily create an implementation that will deliver on those benefits. And I think that in addition to the actual implementation, too many companies focus on that first implementation of a TMS or any technology really, and typically those first initial projects are so constrained by time, by budget, or by the system complexity that the advanced features are never really activated or turned on. And in a lot of implementations, the client is left with having to do this work and figure things out on their own after that initial implementation, and too many times it's just not happening. And we've been working a lot with our clients in the transportation management system space, and a concept that we've kind of come up with through discussions with our clients is around this gardening analogy, where you can't just kind of design and build a perfect vegetable garden. You actually have to do some work after it's done in order to have any value come out of it. And that's resonated well, and I think the analogy is just easy in that clients can understand that after that first implementation, that's when the actual work starts, and we help them figure out how to do it and how to get the value after the technology has already been implemented.
And why is cloud SaaS TMS becoming so popular?
I think for a lot of those same reasons. From a technology standpoint, these on-premise systems or on-premise TMS where the client will actually license the technology, install it on their own servers. There's a lot of complexity in those implementations. These products are very mature, they're very feature rich, and the implementations are lengthy and complex. And I think that a lot of clients have gone through that, and they've realized that they're just not mature enough from an IT standpoint or from a business stewardship standpoint to really get the most out of those systems in the implementation. So a lot of them turn to service-based technology, SaaS or cloud, whatever you want to call it, as a way to kind of help ease the burden of the implementation time, the implementation complexity, implementation costs. And companies kind of see this as a way to faster return on investment, even though that it might be a smaller addressable return, just because the SaaS tools are relatively much newer than the on-premise tools from a transportation standpoint anyway, and they're not quite as feature rich. So you might see or expect a lower return on investment for cloud-based technologies, but a faster return on investment, which might be kind of the key there. But also, I think that the new cloud technologies could add additional benefit over on-premise in that they do add a network effect component for those that are truly multi-tenant TMS, like cloud logistics, like lean logistics. They have some potential to add value over and above the on-premise TMS.
Why is visibility such a difficult goal to achieve?
Yeah, I think this goes back to kind of that gardening and stewardship concept that we use with a lot of our clients. And the old way of implementing a TMS is just to come up and stand up the technology. You know, we'll do a current state business process analysis, and essentially what we're doing in that old school methodology is we're replicating existing business processes. And when we talk about visibility, that visibility kind of buzzword is difficult to achieve because visibility needs to be interdepartmental. So we have things, the business functions from like planning, like forecasting, manufacturing or sourcing, movement or the transportation, and then fulfillment and returns. Each of those functions within an organization might have their own systems, might have several different systems that all have different goals and objectives. They also have probably different sets of master data, different transactional data, and the departments that run those applications will probably have different goals, different objectives, different measurements within their organization. And when we talk about visibility, we're typically talking about physical product movement or kind of tracking the physical product as it goes through those business functions and through those systems, if you kind of think of those things linearly. And the challenge comes from like just something as simple, for example, master data. You know, a SKU might be totally different to your demand forecasting tool as opposed to your warehouse management tool. And when you look at the TMS kind of in its own bubble for that movement component of the physical product moving, you may not have SKU level information at all. But when you ask an organization like a retailer or a consumer products company how they want to track end-to-end supply chain visibility, it's usually at the SKU level. So it becomes very challenging to kind of harmonize all of those functional elements and systems together from an integration standpoint to really achieve that end-to-end visibility objective.
How are visibility and omnichannel similar to a transportation function?
Yeah, I think omnichannel is kind of another one of those real topical type buzzwords. But I mean, omnichannel and visibility are very similar in that they all require a significant amount of cross-functional integration. Not just from a technology standpoint, like technically integrating systems, that's challenging, but also integrating the functions. So that as, you know, if we have customers who are placing orders online for a retailer who can then also come into the store to make a return and possibly purchase items from a brick and mortar store and then have a return going back through the post, being able to tie all of that together requires many different systems to be integrated. It requires many different functions to be integrated. And I think that omnichannel retail is just an extension of visibility challenges, but from an execution, like at an execution level, where visibility is kind of a passive tracking or an active tracking, depending on how you want to look at it. We're now adding with omnichannel a transaction. Like there's a buy, there's an order, there's a sell order. There is some sort of customer at the end of that. Whereas with visibility, we're kind of looking to leverage the information within our organization to support multiple functions. Omnichannel is harder because it adds that transaction element.
And my final question is, how can shippers leverage their TMS to become more carrier friendly?
I think again, if we go back to that gardening or the gardener's methodology concept, I think that this works well with regards to shippers or large shippers who use TMS technology, transportation systems, to go back and really look at things from a strategic standpoint. And if one of their strategic goals as a shipper is to become a carrier-friendly shipper, then the department needs to figure out, okay, what can we do within the TMS to help us achieve that objective? And probably the easiest way for me to explain that is through a client analogy. I've worked with a large apparel retailer for probably 15 years or more, and they implemented a TMS many years ago, over 10 years ago, and the first piece of their implementation was to bring in inbound transportation. So they currently run inbound transportation on their TMS, and for whatever reason, the phase 2 never happened, right, where they were going to do an outbound TMS deployment on the same platform. So over the course of 10 years, they've run an operation where their inbound carriers are running on a different process from an invoicing and a payment standpoint than the outbound carriers. And when you consider that the outbound carriers are probably the same carriers as are hauling your freight on the inbound side, then you run into a situation where you've got a number of large carriers who handle your freight for both inbound and outbound, who are on totally different payment and invoicing processes because you installed inbound in your TMS, never got around to deploying it on the outbound side for whatever reason, and now you have a carrier who's looking at this as, okay, if I'm going to now haul freight for you, in my bid, my rate has to reflect the extra cost, presumably, of doing business with you because I have a different process for hauling your inbound freight versus your outbound freight. And I have to accommodate for those things from a cost standpoint. And I think the ultimate output of that is that it just kind of decreases that favorability, that subjective component that carriers use to grade shipper favorability, right? And the friendliness, carrier friendliness of their policies. So I think in this regard, looking at things from a systems landscape standpoint, tying them with your company's strategic goals, and then the logistics organization or the transportation organization's support of those organizational goals, all of those things have to be integrated and harmonized so that the TMS is able to give you that carrier-friendly perspective that your company needs in order to secure capacity, reduce freight rates, or things like that. So it's essentially just a matter of rolling up your sleeves and doing the work, and not just relying on that initial implementation to drive all the value out of your TMS.
Thanks, Brad. And can you provide a brief background of yourself?
Sure. I attended Michigan State University. I have a degree in transportation and logistics. I've spent a few years working on the carrier side at FedEx Ground. I spent a few years as a shipper at Lucent Technologies, managing a multiple facility transportation organization. I then moved into software, where I spent several years at a company called Manugistics, which is now JDA Software, doing consulting and implementation work, as well as product marketing within their transportation management systems application. And back in 2003, I started up my own consulting business, JDF Consulting. And since 2003, we've really focused on implementation of transportation management systems. And we've recently brought on a new partner, Mike Mulqueen from Manhattan Associates. And Mike is now running our transportation strategy practice. So we're really focused on transportation is our niche, transportation management software as our specialty from an implementation standpoint.
And thanks again for sharing today.
Yeah, thank you, Dustin. I appreciate the call.